Hey there, and welcome to this lesson on expressions inside of After Effects. If you don't know what expressions are, essentially they are code that we use within After Effects to accomplish different things inside of motion design. So there's a ton of expressions out there, too many to cover in this lesson. I am going to tell you about a set of expressions that I use on all types of different projects. These are expressions that are very versatile and can, like I said, be used across the board on different aspects of motion design. And I'm going to show you what you can do with those expressions in these examples. So we're going to focus on wiggle, time, and loop. And for this particular first set, we're going to look at wiggle. So what can wiggle do? So what I've got here is a shape layer, and it's just a simple box shape layer. Nothing going on, no keyframes set. There's no movement. So if I preview this, you can see nothing is happening. So what can wiggle do? So what I'm gonna do is hit P for position. And to add an expression, we have to click Alt or Option and click on the stopwatch. And it immediately pops up, and here's a place for us to put an expression in. And this is where we type in our code. Okay, so typically, if you don't know how to type code in, which, I mean, how many of us know coding? Not a lot of us. But you can click on this little arrow right here, and it's going to pop up all these different forms of expressions, these different codes, pieces of code to use inside of expressions. Now, I'm not a coding guy, and I don't know what a lot of this stuff does. I choose not to because I find different ways around without using code, right? But there are a lot of motion designers out there who absolutely love expressions because they are so powerful, and the things you can do with them are amazing. So we're not going to dive into all of this stuff here, but just know that these menus are full of all these code snippets that you can use to create your own code for expressions. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure our code is highlighted, and we're going to type in wiggle. There's a parentheses, and wiggle typically involves two different numbers. The first number is frequency. So let's say we want something to happen. We want the position to move 5 times per second, and we do a comma. And then the next value, the next variable is the amplitude. So we're moving 5 times per second at a rate of, let's say, 100. And then you have to either click enter on your keypad if you have the enter. Return doesn't work. Return actually moves us to the next line of code, which we don't want. And you saw that number 2 pops up there. That's the next line of code. If we hit enter, we'll actually go out, we'll end the expression and it's ready to activate, or we can actually click outside, anywhere outside the expression. So if I click out here, expression is enabled, and there it goes. So now this box is randomly wiggling at a rate of 5 times per second at an amplitude of 100 pixels. And that 100 pixels could be left, it could be right, it could be up, it could be down. Now, if I want to turn this expression off, all I have to do is go over here to enable expression and just click, and it's off. And the box immediately goes back to its default position of 960 by 540. So next to that is the post expression graph. This is a graph that would happen if we had keyframes going on in here, and then we wanted to see what was happening to those keyframes after the fact. And I can show you that here. If I set a keyframe, and let's just make it move left to right. If we look at that, we can see here in the graph editor what's going on. When we turn on that expression, if we enable show post expression graph, you can see here what's actually happening, right? So that's pretty cool. We learned about the graph editor, but now we can actually see what's happening up here. If I preview this, our box is still moving left to right. There's just additional wiggle that's going on to this box. So you can use keyframes, add expressions to those keyframes, and you're good to go. This next pick whip we'll talk about in just a little bit. We'll come back to this. We've already talked about the language menu, which you can pop up here and see all the different properties of expressions. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn the graph editor off. So this is just one example. I'm going to turn off these keyframes, and you can see I can turn the keyframes off and it still keeps this little drop down arrow. This drop down arrow means there's an expression applied. So if I was to click Alter Option again on the stopwatch, the expression will disappear, and you'll notice this arrow will disappear. Turn it back on. There's an arrow. It drops down. We can put our code back in. So we just saw what wiggle does in the position. So let's hit S for scale. And let's do the same thing. Let's type in wiggle, parentheses, and we'll do the same thing. We'll do 5 and we'll do 100. And this time, instead of clicking outside the box here, I'm just going to hit enter on my keyboard. And there we go. And you're going to see here that the scale is happening, but you can notice that it's not a uniform scale, right? The proportions are not constrained. Even though the constrained proportions is on here, the wiggle expression doesn't recognize that. But what if you want this scale to happen in proportion? You want it to be a uniform scale. The way it looks right now, it's pretty cool. But what if we want it just to scale uniformly? How do we do that? So how we do that is we have to actually add a little bit more code to this. So we can use any variable here, any letter, but let's just use the letter S, because S represents scale, right? And we say that scale is equal to this wiggle. And then we're going to put a colon. Okay, so now we're going to add another line of code, and this is going to start with a bracket, and we're going to say S bracket 0, and then we can do a comma, and we'll do it again, S bracket 0. And then now if we click outside the box, watch what happens. There we have a uniform scale that's happening at a frequency of 5, a variable of 100. So let's just change this to like something much smaller. And you're going to see here it's a lot less of a scale factor. Now I can also change this from 5 to say something like 50. And you can see how much quicker this is happening. It's much more chaotic. Let's bump this back up to 100. Look at that. It's very trippy. It's like a stroby glitchy effect. So that's how you work with scale. It's just a little bit different code, but essentially if you copy this code and you just replace the frequency and the amplitude, it's going to work great for you. So I'll go ahead and turn this off. What else can we do? We can also apply a wiggle expression to things like opacity, right? So we'll go wiggle. We'll make it a little bit more intense in its frequency, and we'll make the opacity drop by 50, right? So opacity goes from 0 to 100. 0 is, you can't see it. 100 is full percent. 100 is full opaque. So now we're saying because the opacity was 100%, we can drop it all the way down to 50%. Or we could do something like this where we change it from 100% to 50% opacity. Now we can go down to 0 because we're going down by 50, or we can add 50 to this up to 100. We can also always play around with things like the frequency. So now it's just very slow. Now it's very fast. Cool. So I'm going to Option or Alt click on opacity to turn this off. Turn this back up to 100% opacity. Okay, so what else can we use the wiggle effect for? Well, it's so powerful. If you go beyond position, scale, opacity, it opens up a whole new world. So on a shape layer, we have things like fills and strokes, right? So let's just take a look at the fill. So if we take a fill and we apply a wiggle expression to the color, and I just type in wiggle, and let's do something crazy like 20 and 50. Just experimenting with values here and watch what happens. Now it's like a crazy nightclub looking light. It's like an LED light, right? So that's just by playing around with these values. I can try a 10. That's pretty cool in itself too. So you see this type of stuff on glitch artwork all the time. I'm going to Option Alt click to turn off the color one. We could go into something like a stroke. And let's add a stroke here. Very fine line here, but there we go. it's there. So let's turn it back down to 10, and we can go in the stroke, and we could go into the stroke width. We could apply a wiggle expression to this. And let's do the same thing. Let's make it like 50. I'll hit enter on the keyboard, and there you go. So it actually makes the box, the inner box, look like it's moving. It's kind of like an illusion. It's just the stroke is getting thin or thick. It actually looks like a scale effect, but it's just the stroke doing its thing. So I'm going to Option or Alt click to turn that off. What else is there? We could do things like the roundness. And we'll just type in random values here. And there we go. Not so cool. But you can see the corners here are getting round, and then they're hard edge, and then back to round again. So I'll go ahead and turn that one off. Okay, so we took a look at what you can do with a shape layer, but what about like a 3D layer? Let's take a look at that. So here we've got 3 boxes. They're 3 3D boxes, and they're pushed back in Z space. Now, if you don't understand what's going on here, I would highly advise you to check out 3D camera techniques. It's a free video series. You can find it on YouTube under motion science, and it'll explain more about how to work with 3D cameras and 3D layers. But here we have 3 layers here, and I'll just go and make sure they're highlighted here. So we've got layer 1 here in the front, layer 2 here in the middle, and layer 3 is back here. So they're just moving back in Z space, and there's a very simple point light here to just give it a little bit of dimension. Nothing much. Then I also have a camera that's sitting here in the front. So I'll switch back to my active camera, and there we go. So right now, if I preview this, there's nothing going on. The camera's not moving. But what if we wanted to give the camera a wiggle expression? Can we do that? Yes, we can. So I'm going to Option click. I'm going to hit wiggle. And I'm going to try something like wiggle 1 time per second at a rate of 250 pixels. And let's see what that looks like. So it totally changes the look of this. There's no keyframes added, but I've got a wiggle expression on my camera now, which gives us a whole lot of life. And if we were to do something where we even separate the position of the camera, which we can do here, I'm just going to right click and say separate dimensions. And the expression is gone now, but we can have more control even over how this works. So let's do, again, let's do like a 1 on and an amplitude of 50. So that's kind of cool. Maybe a little bit more. So the up and down movements, got its own thing going on. Let's add something now to the Z by itself. So maybe the Z is happening just twice as much, and it's maybe moving in twice as much. So it's happening 2 times a second, 250 pixels, right? I don't like that. I'm going to change it back to 1. And then maybe on the X, we're moving, side to side. We're trying to keep things from getting too crazy. And maybe it's, maybe it's just a 50. And then we could even go into things like the rotation. So maybe the Z rotation, maybe the wiggle is happening quite a bit here. Maybe it's, as much as 90 degrees, which is quite a bit. Yeah, it's way too much. Maybe let's go back down to something like 30 degrees. And that's still too much. So maybe 15. Yeah, that looks a lot nicer. So then we could turn off the Z rotation. So we've got just the position going on here. And something else we can try is we can go into the camera options, depth of field, turn it on, crank up the focus distance, maybe something like 2800, really crank up the aperture, maybe 600. So now we've got some out of focus foreground, some out of focus background, the middle ground's in focus, and we can add a wiggle expression to the focus distance. So we'll just do wiggle, maybe 4 and 1000, just to give it a lot to work with. And that looks pretty cool too. So you can see the potential of the wiggle expression is super powerful within the 3D camera inside of After Effects. So how can we use the wiggle expression for imagery, like for raster-based stuff? Well, here's a great example of how you could use it. Now I've already got this one set up. I'm going to show you what this looks like. And you can see it's just a light bulb, but the light bulb is a photograph and it looks like the light inside the bulb is actually flickering. And I did this through the wiggle expression. So let me show you what I did here. So I'm going to turn off the glow effect and I'm just going to delete this and we're going to start from the beginning. So this is just the photograph. Nothing's happening. What I did was I duplicated this layer and you can see there's just a JPEG. I'm going to duplicate it and I'm just going to create a mask, a very basic mask just around the filament inside this bulb here. And this would work with any type of image-based light bulb, okay? So now you can see we've got this bulb on top. I'm hitting F for feather, and I'm bringing up the feathering to 250 pixels, so a really wide feather, okay? So when it overlays on top of this bulb, it looks like the same image there. But the magic comes when I hit T for transparency or opacity. Okay, so we're going to do Alt or Option click. I'm going to type in wiggle. And we're going to do 5, let's try 520, enter. And then we have to make sure and change this to screen. So it creates a little bit more brightness inside here. I'm going to hit 0, see what happens. So I can see a little bit happening there. Let's try, instead of 5, let's try a high number like 50. There we go. Maybe even increase this to 40. And you can always play around with values, like we could drop the 100% down to 80, and now it's got a little bit more room. When it's 100% opacity, because we have an amplitude of 40, it can only drop down to 60 because we're already at 100%. So the only way it can go 40 is down to 60. If we're at 60%, we can go up to 100% or down to 20%, which creates more of a flicker here. I feel like the frequency is a little bit too fast there, so let's try 25. Yeah, so there you go. So that works for me. The last thing I did is I just added a little bit of a glow on top. So this is just a little bit bonus here for you. The glow makes it just a little bit nicer looking, in my opinion. So that's without glow, and this is with glow. And just to show you how I did this, I just took the After Effects glow and I just increase the threshold to somewhere around 35, a radius of 15. The trick here is to make the intensity as very, very low. So 35, 15.1. So if you'll notice here, glow intensity defaults to 1. When I reset that, you can see here the threshold didn't change much. It was 60 to begin with, the radius was 10. I just dropped this to 35, increased the radius, and dropped the intensity to 0.1. Then I duplicated this glow and brought down the threshold of this one, increased the radius, and again, the intensity is 0.1. And then I duplicated that one more time, threshold is 0, radius is very wide, intensity is 0.1. It's just a nice way to add any glow to an image and really make it pop. Just to show you, if I pause this here and I take a screenshot, and then let's just duplicate this one more time. So now we have a glow 4, and the first 3 glows I'm going to turn off. I'm just going to reset this to its initial state. And this is how the glow comes in inside of After Effects, and it just doesn't look good. So that's with the default glow, and this is with the glow I created off of the 3 different glows. So a very simple process, but the glow makes it look that much nicer. Okay, so that's what you can do with the wiggle expression. Next, we're going to move on and take a look at the time expression.